Come on. It's just taking it a minute. There we go. So I like to begin with the PowerPoint to make sure that we're all on the same page with Ascribe Coder. And I start out just telling you briefly about Ascribe Coder. Ascribe Coder was released on September 20th of 2013. It is available today on the live servers. So you can access Ascribe Coder today when you right-click on a question. It is an option. And it is being used today for coding. It's out there, it's live, and it works. Ascribe Coder was created to merge the functionality of 4 pages, review responses, the single response coder interface, and edit the codebook, along with Codebook Editor Preview. But you may have noticed Codebook Editor Preview was taken away on September 20th when we first released Ascribe Coder. This was developed with our Ascribe community feedback. Our users group has been working hand in hand with the development team to give feedback on Ascribe Coder, and a lot of things that have been changed in Ascribe Coder were a result of user group discussions. The users group meets the second Wednesday of every month, and if you're interested in joining the users group or participating in the users group, please email support@languagelogic.net and let them know you'd like to be a part of the users group, and we'll get you on the list. Also, Ascribe Coder, in rewriting it, one of the main goals of our development team was to make it multi-browser compatible. So you can use Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, or Safari on a Mac to access Ascribe Coder. As a matter of fact, most of the tools in Ascribe today can be used in multiple browsers, with the exception of review responses, the single response coder interface, edit the codebook, and phrase analyzer. Okay, so those are the tools that can't be accessed through Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. Can still only be accessed through Internet Explorer. Okay, a little bit about Ascribe Coder since its release. Again, as you can see, there's been a lot of tweaks to Ascribe Coder, and again, those came mostly from our users group. I'm not going to go over these, but if you're interested in reading this or having a copy of this, I have actually uploaded this PowerPoint to the materials section. And let me just make sure that attendees can view materials. Okay, so now you guys should be able to see the materials in your GoToMeeting dashboard, and you should be able to download this PowerPoint. And really, it's just the pages that I've gone over here. It's a little 5-page PowerPoint. So if you're interested in reading more about this, you can download that. I'm going to go directly down here to our version 7.6 to just let you know what's coming for Ascribe Coder, and really what's coming for Ascribe. Version 7.6 is scheduled for March of 2014, and I should say tentatively, but it is scheduled for March, and that's when we'll be introducing a server-side spell check. This spell check will be available for Ascribe Coder, translations, transcriptions, and edit responses, edit respondent. Okay, so that's a spell check that will be maintained by us here at Ascribe and developed by us. Version 8 is scheduled for, or tentatively scheduled for June of 2014, and this is the most important one. It's in June we plan to remove review responses, the single response coder interface, and edit the codebook. All right. So again, Ascribe Coder was created to replace those windows, so we plan to take them away and remove them from Ascribe in June of 2014. One thing to note, one thing that I say at the beginning of every one of these sessions and at the end, is that we really want to know if you know, as you're using Ascribe Coder, if there are reasons that you have to go back to review responses or the single response coder interface or edit the codebook, let us know those reasons. Send that to support. You know, that I go to review responses to do this because I can't do it in Ascribe Coder, or in Ascribe Coder it's doing this. And just let us know. Those are the things that we need to know to make sure that Ascribe Coder is exactly what we need it to be by June of 2014. Then version 8.1 is tentatively scheduled for July of 2014, and that's just a new version of our Illustrator for studies in Ascribe. And then version 8.2 is scheduled for August of 2014, and that's when we'll see an updated phrase analyzer. Okay, so phrase analyzer today, it's actually in the process of being rewritten so that it's multi-browser compatible. And we should see that updated phrase analyzer again in August of 2014. And also in August of 2014, we should see some of the desktop, for those of you that use Ascribe desktop, we should see some of Ascribe desktop functionality moved over to our Ascribe web, and mainly the merge map functionality. And then version 8.3 is scheduled for October, and that's when we should see the removal of Ascribe desktop and some ACM updates. So that's everything I wanted to talk about that's going on with Ascribe Coder, and now to actually get over to the important stuff. And there we go. Get into Ascribe. So I'm going to navigate over to Supervisor Studies. Oh, and of course, I am on the wrong account. How did I do? Oh, I know why I did that. 1 second there. Now I'm going to navigate over to Supervisor Studies. This looks better. And right-click on my study and choose Questions. And for the first part of this, I'm going to actually go into my Question 7 in my Static Hair study, and I'm going to choose Ascribe Coder. All right. So to start out, just for those that are kind of new to Ascribe Coder, maybe this is one of your first sessions on Ascribe Coder, I will go over the layout. So when we first navigate into Ascribe Coder, on the right side of the screen we see our codebook. It looks similar to what we see in Review Responses. It's what we're used to. The nets are in bold, the codes are in regular font. I've got my code values showing and my counts and percentages showing. One new thing is at the top it actually tells us how many responses we have in our current response pool, how many are coded, and then what's left to be coded, and then the percent that's coded. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into the codebook side of things today. We're going to focus more on the response side. But above our codebook, we have our codebook toolbar. I'll be going over the codebook tools, I think next Monday. I think the webinar from Monday is on the codebook toolbar, where I'd be going into more detail on the codebook side of things. All right. At the bottom of our screen, we see our question information. When we first navigate in, I think we see something like this, but we can resize the question information if we like, and we can actually minimize it. So that's our question information. And then over here on the left side of the screen, this is our response pane. This is where we're going to return our responses. Okay? We can make our response pane larger or smaller, or depending, make our codebook pane larger or smaller by moving this resizer bar here in the middle. And when we talk about editing the codebook, one of the things that we might do is actually completely, click this little button here so that the only thing we see is our codebook while we're editing our codebook. If you end up in this view, you just click the little toggle button to bring it back to the middle of the screen or where you last left it. This sticks, the resizing does stick for you as a user from session to session. Okay? So today we're going to be focusing more on the response side of things. And the first thing to note on the response side is, of course, we have our toolbar, and we'll be talking about the toolbar today. The first tool in the toolbar is our navigation icon. If we click on our navigation icon, and it's a right click or a left click, it doesn't matter, just a click, we see all the places that we can navigate in Ascribe. So we do not have access to right-click navigation in the modernized Ascribe tools. Rather, we'll navigate via the navigation icon. Okay? So that's, yes, that's everything I wanted to say about that. One other thing to note before we get into the actual tools, we are going to be spending time, when I'm doing my demos, I'm mostly staying in the code multiple response mode. But there is another mode, and that's the code, one response at a time mode, or single response coding mode. Okay, But again, we're going to be focused on multiple responses today. All right, so the first thing we have in our list of, in our response toolbar is our search. And this search is very similar to the regular or the expression tester in review responses. And when we open up the search, the first thing you might note is that the text field is the first thing here. So if we leave that blank, that just means we're searching for all. If you're used to searching by regular expression, so say that you're used to searching for static or hair or something, you know, using regular expressions, we're saying whatever, you would want to make sure you toggle on the regular expression option here, okay, if you're going to be searching for words. The Show Only field allows us to choose whether we want to return both coded and uncoded responses. So we leave this field blank if we want to return coded and uncoded responses. If we're only interested in seeing uncoded, then we'll choose Show Uncoded. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a search just to bring up some responses. There we go. All right. So now, again, I'm showing the coded and uncoded. So you see I've returned 348 responses. It's 348 over 348. If I want to bring up just my uncoded, I choose uncoded. And now I'm seeing just my uncoded responses. All right. Quickly, I was a bit confused there for a minute. I should have gone back in and changed this from this morning. There we go. All right. So now I'm just seeing my uncoded responses. I also have the ability to bring up just my coded responses, so Show Only responses. So it's Show Only responses with any code applied. So now I'm saying Show Only. It should say responses with any code applied. So now I'm just bringing up my coded responses. I have 56 out of 348 coded. All right. Cool. Most of the time we'll probably be looking for our uncoded responses, and we may even be searching. So if I want to search for winter, go ahead and type in the word winter here. So now I'm bringing up those responses that have the word winter in there. Okay? All right. Make sure I went over that. A couple of newcomers in the meeting today. All right. So what else do we have here? We've got responses with any of the selected codes applied. So these three options, any of the selected codes applied, all of the selected codes applied, and none of the selected codes applied, depend on us selecting codes. We select codes by clicking on them. Okay? So if I want to bring up any of the responses that have controls frizziness, I will select controls frizziness and choose any of the selected codes and hit go. So now I'm going to see just those 7 responses that have the controls frizziness code. All right? If I want to bring up the responses that have controls frizziness or good reasonable price, then I will select controls frizziness and good reasonable price, right-click on either one of them, and hit search any, and it's going to bring up those responses that have controls frizziness or good reasonable price applied. Okay? So 13 out of 348 responses have controls frizziness or good reasonable price applied. Now, if I want to show those responses that have both controls frizziness and good reasonable price, then I'm going to choose all and hit go. Okay? And if I want to show those responses that have neither controls frizziness or good reasonable price, then I'm going to click select none. And when I select none, there's something a little different. It brings up the uncoded responses. So it'll bring up all the uncoded responses and those coded responses that do not have controls frizziness or good reasonable price. Okay, when I do that. one thing to note, this any and all, it's much easier to just use the right click. Let me go back to this. It's much easier to use the right click, search any. So if I right click, it's going to bring up all the any of the responses that have controls frizziness or good reasonable price. And if I hit search all, it's going to bring up those responses that have controls frizziness and good reasonable price. So all of the selected codes applied. Again, just to note, bring this up for a second. Responses any is the same as any of the selected codes applied. Responses all is the same as all of the selected codes applied. Okay. Again, I think it's easier to use the actual code book to select the codes and then right-click and search all, search any. This was a users group suggestion that the development team took. Okay, the other three are for expression matching. So those of you that are familiar with regular expressions, these three options depend on us having codes selected as well. And what it does is matches the regular expression. So I can bring up coded and uncoded that match a regular expression, uncoded that match a regular expression for a code, or coded that match a regular expression for a code. All right? So if I have a regular expression, let's just see if we have one. Here I've got a regular expression, and what I can do is select this code and pop up here and say, you know what, show me all the responses that match that expression. So now I see all of the responses that match that expression. But then I can say, you know what, show me just the uncoded that match the expression. Now I see just the uncoded, so now I see 5. Or show me the coded, in which case I should just see 1. And there we go. Okay? So that is our expression matching searches. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 require us to have codes selected. Our normal searching, the searching that we're kind of used to, is our any code applied, our uncoded responses, or both coded and uncoded, which means we leave this blank. All right. And whenever I'm using these, I've got new search selected in most cases. The next option here is single respondent. I'm going to skip over that for now. I think I'm going to talk about single respondent when I talk about shared code books, because that's mainly when it's pertinent. Okay. But then we have search in current responses. So if I bring up these responses, all the responses that say static. Let's just bring up all the responses that say static. Oh, I did search. Let's do a new search first. There we go. And I'm bringing up all the responses that say static. There are 81 responses that have the word static in them. Okay? The word static is actually a regular expression for one of my codes, so it's not actually highlighted red. If it were not a regular expression, it would be highlighted red. Okay. So I've got 81 responses that have the word static. Maybe I want to find the responses that have winter and static. So now I'm going to be searching these 81 responses for the word winter. There are 18 responses that have the word static and the word winter in them. And I'm bringing up the coded and uncoded. I know that. I've got the show only box as blank right now. So 18 responses, 18 out of 348, have the word static and the word winter. If we go through, we'll see static and winter, static and winter, static winter, static winter, so on, so forth. Okay. So what if I then wanted to select, so search in current responses searches, but what if I want to select in current responses? So I want to leave these 18 up, but I want to select those that say fly and hit go. So I've got 3 responses that say static, winter, and something about fly. All right? So these new additions, you know, we've always had search in, but now we have actual select in too. And the cool thing about the search in is that we do have accurate counts and percentages up here on our stats bar now when we search in a current set. But now we have select in as well, which just helps us really get to what we want to code. Okay? And for those of you that are kind of new to Ascribe Coder, you know we can apply codes to these responses that are selected either by, we can just click, and it applies controls flyaway hair to these 3 responses, right? I could also do my little, oh, that one's already put there. I could also use my hyperlinks to apply codes, or I could drag an individual code to a response, and it would just apply to that response. Okay? So when responses are selected, clicking on a code applies that code to the selected responses. Dragging and dropping a code will always just apply that code to that response. Okay? Drag drop is always a one at a time in the new system. All right, so that was just a brief overview of applying codes. We have another option, and that is to include related responses. For those of you that are familiar with related responses, you can now show related responses in multiple response mode. So if you wanted to do that, you could choose to include related responses. I'll probably go over that in more detail in a future webinar. All right, the second tab on our search responses is the Replace tab. And this Replace tab allows us to do a mass replace, a mass find and replace. So if I wanted to find and currently, we can do that for translation, transcription, and notes. Okay? You have the option to match case or match whole word, or both, when you're finding and replacing. Now, we do have an account level option that would allow you to turn on that option to edit the verbatim in Ascribe Coder. If you turned that on, then you could actually click on verbatim. So if you're one of those accounts where you're required to edit the verbatim in Ascribe, you could turn on verbatim editing in Ascribe Coder at the account level. Okay? So that's our replace. The third tab is our inconsistencies tab, and the inconsistencies allow us to check our coding and check the duplicates in our coding for consistent coding. So you've got an option. You can show responses with inconsistent coding where order matters, or with inconsistent coding where order does not matter, and then with inconsistent translations. So basically it's checking your duplicate responses to make sure that they're coded consistently or translated consistently, whichever. You can also match responses by verbatim. So if you're coding from the verbatim, then you would want to match on verbatim. If you're coding from the translation or the transcription, then you would want to match on the translation or transcription. This report is an awesome report for those of us that are delivering jobs day to day. So we can just do a quick check to make sure that the easy stuff, the duplicates, are coded consistently. Okay, and basically all you do is hit go, and it'll run the consistency report. I don't have any inconsistencies in my data today, but it would bring up those responses that were coded inconsistently. All right, and that was our inconsistencies tab. I'm going to go back to find, delete, and bring up all of the responses again. There we go. Every time you bring up the search, it does retain what you've last selected. Okay? So now I've got all of my coded responses. Yes, Julie?
Can you answer a quick question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. How do you go back and forth between showing responses for only one question and for multiple open-ends?
Are we talking about shared code books, Julie?
Yes.
Or are we talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, shared code.
Okay.
Books.
Okay. We can talk about that. Let me talk real quick about search again, and then I'll get over here to the question option. Okay. So I just wanted to bring up the search again option and make sure I cover that. Most of us are going to be searching for our uncoded responses, right? And we're going to be going through and coding, and you know, maybe we're coding with our expressions, maybe we're pulling some responses over for coding, whatever. However we're coding, right? We're coding away, and when we're, you know, we might code a few, we might code more than a few, whatever. Apply some more codes here. Just be crazy here. Okay. And then I'm ready. You know what? I just want to bring up my uncoded responses again. All I have to do is hit search again, and it brings up my uncoded responses. And at all times, we know what our filter is. I'm showing only my uncoded responses. I also know how I've got my stuff sorted. I've got my stuff sorted alphabetically by verbatim today. Okay? So search again keeps us from having to hit the search icon and hit go. Okay, search again applies that last search. It's just a shortcut to applying the last search we did. Search again, and now I've got 278 out of 348. Boom, boom, boom. Search again, and now I've got 276 out of 348. Okay, so it's a easy way to quickly, you know, say, okay, boom, how many do I have left that are uncoded? All right, that's how my search again works. So now let's go ahead and pop over to our questions. And this is the question was, how do we bring up questions from shared code book? And I've got a question here that's Q11, and it shares a code book with 7 questions in this study. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right-click on Q11, and I'm going to navigate into Ascribe Coder. Okay? And I can then say, you know what? I want to bring over all the questions. I can shift-click to bring them all over. I want to bring over all the questions that share a code book, or I could say, you know what? I only want to bring over a few that share this code book. You know, I decide which questions I want to code from the shared code book. All right? So I turn those on, and then I'm going to do a search. And I'm going to bring up, I'll go ahead and bring up all my responses. So it's bringing up all the responses from my shared code book. Okay? If I click on questions down here, you will see that it's brought up all the questions from my shared code book. All right? So those are the responses I'm showing. You'll see also that there are 1,135 responses that I've, you know, in my current response pool. 619 of them are coded. But I'm only showing 1,000 out of 1,135. Pay attention to my Search Again button. My Search Again button has a green background. That tells me that I'm paging. So I'm seeing the first 1,000 out of 1,135. When I page, I see the 135 that were left over. Okay? When I hit the page again, it goes back to the first 1,000. Okay? So when I'm bringing up more than 1,000 responses, my Ascribe Coder screen is paged. I just want to make sure I explain that. But if I code something that is a duplicate on both pages, it will code them. Okay? If I had always save on this page and on my second page and coded this, it would code all of the duplicates. So it would code the ones that were on the second page too. All right. So one of the things that we like to do when we're showing responses across shared code books, we might want to show our question ID. We might even want to show our respondent ID. Okay? So now I'm showing my question ID and my respondent ID so I can see which questions my responses are coming from. All right. Let me go back to my search and talk now about my single respondent search. When I'm doing my single respondent search, what it's doing is it's bringing up for one respondent at a time. So now I've got respondent 10,342, and I've got his answer to Q11 and Q11 under bar 5. When I hit search again, now I've got respondent 10,078. Hit search again, now I've got respondent 10,298. So notice that what I'm doing here is I'm getting to see a respondent view of my verbatims, okay? A lot of these really do only have one question. So the respondent view allows us to see questions across shared, to see a respondent across shared code books. All right, and that's brand new. For those of us that have iterated questions, very useful. We've got a lot of clients that are loving that tool. Okay, so now let's go ahead and that's from shared code book. Let's go ahead and go back to our, I saw that question pop up, is why I paused, Julie. The question was, is there a way to see all responses not limited to 1,000? And the answer to that is no. With the paging, to make things run smoother, it is restricted to 1,000. You can change the restriction. When you search, you can change the restriction to, say, 300 if you like, but it is restricted to 1,000. If you want to see the next page, you would click on the icon, and that's supposed to make it more manageable for us. And we do have a number of sort options that allow us to see which order we want these things displayed in. If we want to display them by verbatim length, then verbatim, we can do that. But yeah, the paging does, it's set at 1,000. So we'll never show more than 1,000 responses when we search. But it does bring all of them up, and we can page to the next set very easily. Okay. So the next thing I was going to talk about is the option to print. And the print option, I'm going back into Q7 for the print option. The print option allows us to print, let me just bring up my any code applied. There we go. All right. So the print option lets us export verbatims, basically. And it lets us export them to either Excel or Word. So we get to choose the format. And then we get to choose what we're exporting. We can export the displayed responses, so that'd be everything displayed on this page. We can export all responses for the current questions. So if we were showing from shared code book, it would export all the responses for the questions that from our shared code book. All responses for current studies. So one of the things that I should have mentioned is that we can also now code across studies. If we share code books across studies, we'll have that option to pull over. So this is the study ID. The questions that share will be under it. So we might see a list of, if for those of us that have trackers, we would see a list of, the tracker study IDs and then the questions that were shared with this particular question, or the code books that were shared. And we now have that option to export or print responses from current studies. And then this last one depends on us selecting codes in the code book. So if I wanted to report on just controls frizziness, I can select the code controls frizziness and then say just export the responses for the code selected in the code book. I could select as many codes as I wanted and do that. So it's like a verbatim report for those selected codes. The other thing that we have, the other option, is just the selected responses. This is helpful if we have an issue where we've got a few responses that are questionable. What we can do is select those responses and hit print, not settings, hit print and say, you know what, just print the selected responses for me. And when we hit OK, it'll output those to Excel for us. Okay? All right. The other thing about print, you know what, no, I don't think I have anything else about print. Oh, yes, I do. The other thing about print is that what it prints out is, you know, whatever you're displaying. So if you want the study ID to be in your printout, then you would turn on the study ID. If you want the question ID, you would turn on the question ID. So whatever you've got selected will be printed out to Excel. And I've got my question ID, my respondent ID, whether the verbatim was reviewed, whether the translation and whether it was reviewed, transcription, whether it was reviewed, my notes field, my output ID, and then my code descriptions. Okay. All right. So that's our print option. While I'm on settings, one of the things that is really cool about Ascribe Coder is that we do control what we're seeing on the screen. I have chosen now to show the study ID. I can actually turn that off. I can say, you know what, I want everything on a new line. So all the information, the study ID, question ID, and respondent ID are on one line. My verbatim's on another line. When I have a note, that's on yet another line. And then my codes are on another line. So you choose how you want to see. And it's kind of interactive. So you click on it and you see it and say, okay, yeah, I want that, or you know what, no, I don't want that. I want this way. Okay, so you choose. There are a couple options here that, let me see, what time do we have? Time is flying. Oh, we got a few more minutes. Let me go over the display options just so that we've gotten through those. The selection checkbox is here for those people that say it's too easy to select. Since we have a single click to select now rather than a double click or a control click, the selection checkbox kind of makes sure that you actually click on the checkbox so you're not inadvertently selecting responses. So the selection checkbox is just there to make sure that you're accurately clicking and you know, this is what I want to do. Okay? The Apply Selected Codes button is yet another way to code. With the Applied Selected Codes button toggled on, what you can do is select codes in your code book, and it can be one code or many codes, and then say, you know what, I want to apply those codes to this response. And I want to apply those codes to this response. And notice I've got code duplicates turned on, so it's actually coding my duplicates too, which is part of the reason I didn't have any inconsistencies before. All right. So yes, this is targeted coding. Apply the selected codes button that allows you to select the codes in your code book and then hit the target to apply them. The coding quality turns on our little code quality icon. So this would be marking these responses as quality reviewed. If I want to mark a lot, I can select all and then right-click and say Set Selected as Quality Reviewed, and it sets them all as Quality Reviewed. Okay, so that's my little Quality Reviewed icon. The other thing to note, and this goes back to shared code books, if you always want to bring up your responses from shared code book, you can turn that on in your response settings. So this when starting include questions from current studies sharing a code book. This tells me that I want to bring in my open-ended questions, my other specified questions, and my closed-end questions that might be sharing this code book. All right? So that's kind of like turning on the from shared code book toggle in review responses in view options. And once this is on, it sticks until you change it back. And it's from session to session, study to study. It would stick. All right? And again, I'm going to go ahead and end on that today. What I will do in my next set of webinars that I'm setting up for March is I will actually set up webinars specifically for search, specifically for print, for for settings, for filter sorting, shared code books, and so on. Okay? So I'm opening the floor now. Julie, are there any questions?
Can you explain drag response to copy coding quickly?
Oh, yeah. So, okay, drag response to copy coding, which I turn off most of the time. Let me quickly show that. I'm going to bring up my uncoded responses, though, so I've got kind of a clean slate over here. And the other thing I'm going to do Let's turn off all this stuff that I don't find necessary when I'm coding. Okay. All right. So let's say that I've got a couple of responses that would get the same codes, right? I'm going to go ahead and turn on drag response to copy coding. What that allows me to do is drag a response to another response and copy all of the codes that were applied. Okay? Now, mind you, I can still drag one at a time without that turned on. Oh, that's swapping. I don't want to swap. I can still drag one at a time and drop them on the response. Okay? I can do that. But if I want to apply all of the codes, and I guess this would probably be one of those things that would probably come into play if I had like 5 or 6 codes applied, then I can drag and drop and copy all of the codes from one response to another. Okay? The reason I have that turned off is because a lot of the times when I'm coding, I'll have the notes field on. Oh, goodness. There we go. I'll have the notes field on. And what I would like to do when I'm taking notes is, you know, I might want to drag and drop into my notes field. And I can't do that. So what I'd want to do, what I want to do is Control-C and then Control-V into my notes field. And sometimes that drag drop or drag responses to copy coding gets in the way. So if I'm trying to Control-C, Control-V, it doesn't seem to be getting in the way today. That's interesting.
Are you in Chrome? Are you in Chrome, Laura?
I am.
Okay. You can't drag and drop into notes in Chrome right now.
Right, right. But I used not to be able to even, like if I even went to do this, Julie, it would turn green and wouldn't let me even highlight to do the Control-C, Control-V. Is why I usually turn this guy off. But that's, you know, who knows. So that's what drag response to copy coding is all about. Any other questions, Julie?
Yes. The question is, can you change the color of the verbatim?
What we can do, we can change the font of the verbatim. We can change the size of the font. We can bold or unbold the verbatim. We can do the same with related responses and applied codes. Notes are always in italics, but they're the same font as the responses. Okay, so if my response is unbolded, my note's unbolded. But again, my notes are always in italics, just so you know. But we cannot today change the color of the response. When we're showing the respondent ID, we can say we don't want that in red. And the color of the respondent ID doesn't mean anything. It's just it was a request early on so that people could differentiate between the respondent ID and the response easily. And that's why we have the option for the respondent ID to be in red or not. Any other questions?
If anybody has any other questions, just type it into the chat box.
Nothing more? All right.
Nothing more. Yeah.
It looks like we're out of time. Thanks, everyone, for attending. And again, I'm going to say anytime you find yourself moving from Ascribe Coder to review responses or the single response coder interface or edit the code book, please let us know why. A lot of times there's something here that we can show you. And if there's not, then what we'll do is track it and bring it up with the development team. We want to make sure that you're just as productive more productive in Ascribe Coder than you are today in review responses. Thanks so much.